Have you ever looked at yourself and just been like, God, I wish I could just move somewhere where nobody knows my name and start over from scratch? Well, if you have, you're not alone because this girl has done it not once, but twice. So today in the treehouse, I am really hoping to normalize and give a voice to what it is like to start your life over. And that it can work out well for you. So come on inside the treehouse. I'm happy to host you.
Hey, welcome to the Treehouse Athenaeum, a place to discover the tools that empower you to embrace both the beauty and challenges of personal growth. There are so many branches leading to your roots. Come on, let's explore.
Good afternoon, good evening, good morning, good commute, wherever you are in your day. Of course, I am Lisa, here hosting you in the treehouse today because Dave and Daniela most certainly do not start off podcasts in that way. But I thought that today I would take advantage of this little platform that I have because my personal motto in life is do it for the stories. That's something that has taken me far. Storytelling is a big part of my life. It's who I am in my DNA. And, I'm a Leo, so it is encoded in me to enjoy the spotlight a little bit, right? So even though I wouldn't say that I necessarily go seeking these things out, if I get the hit, I'm probably going to do it. And if I feel it in the pit of my stomach, like this is something I should do, then I follow it. So let's dive into it. I had this really big bucket list item dream when I was in my late teens, early 20s. I really wanted to be a Jungle Cruise skipper. For those of you that don't know what a Jungle Cruise skipper is, the Jungle Cruise is a ride that exists at both Disneyland and Disney World, so in California and in Florida. And it is about a 10-minute ride in which your very brave skipper will guide you through the four rivers of the world, past some very reliable animals, and they will tell you jokes about it. The ride was originally set up to be a more serious thing, but it evolved throughout the ages, and we are where we are. And I could go down a whole rabbit hole with the history of this particular ride because I love it, but that's not what we're here talking about today. So I had gone on trips to Disneyland with my roommates pretty frequently when I was in college. It started off from the time when some friends and I were at lunch and we were like, hey, you want to go to Disneyland after class today? And we were like, sure. So we all piled in and we drove for 16 hours to get to Disneyland, and we got ready in the bathroom of an IHOP. And after that, I kind of had the Disney bug. I really just wanted to experience it because it felt like freedom to me. Though I did watch Disney movies when I was a kid, it wasn't anything that I felt like I over-identified with. But Pirates of the Caribbean, when that came out in 2003, I got hooked on that movie and watched it a really unseemly amount of times in theaters. And Jungle Cruise was the other thing that really got my attention. So I did what I do when I get obsessed with something, which is just like find a way to insert it into just about every corner of my life. And I declared that I was going to run away to Disney and become a Jungle Cruise skipper and marry a skipper. And I thought that that was just kind of a joke. It was something that I was saying to be like quirky and cute. But at the time, I really had it in my head that I wanted to be a journalist. And I was going through that same kind of like period of self-discovery that just about every newly minted adult goes through, where they're exploring their interests and understanding what that taste of freedom is like in the first place. So I go through college and I meet a friend, and he and I decide that we are going to take a run at this thing. We are going to move out to California together He is going to try to into the breakdancing scene in Los Angeles, and I am going to try my hand at working at Disney and find an inroads that way. So, um, we started planning a road trip, and the road trip was going to take us through Vegas. We were going to do a one night stop there because 16 hours is a really long time to push through driving, even when you are young. We were going to drive through Vegas, then we were going to go apartment hunting out in Southern California, and it was going to be great. So we had all of this planned out, and then my friend calls me 2 weeks before we're supposed to go out looking for apartments. And he says, Lisa, I think I want to go to Vegas. And I was like, okay, great. We are going to Vegas. And he was like, no, no, no. Like, I think I want to move to Vegas. And I was like, guess what's not in Vegas? Disney's not in Vegas. Um, the way I handled it was very congruent with who I was at the time. I think that I would probably handle it differently as a woman in her 30s now. But we ended up deciding to go on the trip anyway. So we get out to Vegas, we do the breakdancing thing, we watch Jabberwockies in Las Vegas, and then moved on to Disneyland. And I was really scanning the environment for a way in which I could see myself still pursuing this path, still deciding to do the brave thing and move to Southern California and check this thing off my bucket list. And I can't find it. So I get home and I call a friend who has been doing the college program for Disney in Florida. And I said, hey, my life got turned upside down. Can I please come visit you and just see if I would like it out there? And he said, yeah, of course. So I booked a plane ticket and I get off the plane the day that I arrive at MCO, which is Orlando Airport. And this friend says to me, you know, I know somebody that just got let go from their job and they're feeling pretty depressed right now. Would it be okay if they came to the beach with us? I'm like, yeah, of course. Like, what kind of monster would say no to feeling better at the beach? I know the beach makes me feel better. Um, so we go to the beach, pick up the friend. The friend and I hit it off right away. We're doing really great, having a lot of fun, the three of us together. And then it comes up that I am considering moving out to Orlando. And the friend says, well, that's amazing. I actually have a spot opening in my apartment next month. Do you want it? Do I want it? Yeah, like that to me, I think was the first time that I really felt the universe just like giving me the old wink here, right? Like I had had this moment where I was so upset. I wasn't going to get to move to California. I was feeling so miserable for myself that this dream wasn't going to plan out the exact way that I thought it was going to. And then I decide to make one little tweak towards a very similar outcome, and it just comes together. It comes together. So I said, you know what? F it. I'm going to do it. I am going to put all of the stuff that will fit in my little Honda Accord, and I'm going to drive across the country, and I'm going to hope it works out. And that's exactly what I did. And it was a big move, right? Like I was moving down there knowing that the contact that I had in Florida was going to be leaving within a few months. So essentially, I was starting over from absolute scratch. Which is an interesting thing to do at any point in your life, but I do feel that in your early 20s, it's a little bit easier because you've just done something very similar to that. If you have had a college dorm room experience. And even if you haven't gone to college and you know, experience what dorm life is like, chances are you probably picked up a job and you really had to figure out what the social landscape was that way as well. And you're in this place where like Nobody's known you for years. Nobody has like a foregone conclusion about you. Nobody's basing something off of something stupid that you said one time in third grade that you didn't realize was going to be, this core memory for someone else. So I'm thinking, this is great. This is glamorized. This is going to be cool. And I worked at Chili's at the time. I ended up transferring Chili's, and that was a really high volume restaurant that I was not very happy about. Like, I moved to Florida with the intention of getting out of the restaurant industry. At that point, I had been in food and beverage for about 5 years, and I was ready to move on. Like a new challenge was calling. So I spend the time at Chili's, and I am trying to network my way in with the folks that sit at my bar, which, good thought, Lisa, but I don't know that the tourists are going to be able to get you an inroads to Disney. I ended up just applying for any open position I could find that was going to be frontline. And then I figured, I will try and finagle my way into asking for Jungle Cruise if I get it. So I go into the casting castle. Yes, Disney's headquarters for casting is, in fact, in a castle. You can see it from Disney Springs. And the doorknobs look like the doorknobs from Alice in Wonderland, where they're like, they get big and they're personified, and it's a little bit creepy, but like it adds to the allure. So I get an interview at Disney finally, and I tell them, hey, I really want to go into attractions. And they said, well, with all this food and beverage experience, why wouldn't you want to go into food and beverage? And I said, well, because it's a dream of mine to work at the Jungle Cruise. So they end up hiring me for attractions, and I get hired at Hollywood Studios, which is not where the Jungle Cruise exists. This is the location where I get my feet wet. I'm starting to talk and network now with cast members, which is getting me further than networking with tourists is. And they give me this really good intel that, hey, you need to put in for full time ASAP. The quicker you can get a full time status, the better off your life is going to be. So I thought, let me shoot for the stars. I'm gonna put in for Magic Kingdom, Adventureland Liberty Square, which is where the Jungle Cruise is housed within that kind of complex. So I get the call that same October. I moved in July. I get a call saying that I will be moved to the Jungle Cruise in October. What? I was so freaking happy. Like, I couldn't believe it. Have you ever just seen a manifestation play out like that? Like, I hadn't. Disney is the largest single site employer in the United States. And when I say that, I mean there's something like, well, at the time, there were something like 70,000 cast members working just in Orlando. And so it felt very like needle in a haystack to me. But setting that intention brought me some really interesting things that I don't think I could have predicted otherwise. You might remember that when I started telling this story, one of the things that I mentioned is that I wanted to marry a skipper. That is where I met my eventual husband. And it was fun, right? Like, we had a good time. It was, if you know what it's like to date a funny man, that's what it was like. And it was cool that we got to have that story, because it was like, well, I spoke it into existence, right? Like, this is very cool. And then came the day when I recognized I was no longer happy at Jungle Cruise. Now, did that mean that I regretted going ahead and following my dreams and getting this thing checked off my bucket list? No, absolutely not. Okay, one time I walked into work and someone comes up to me and goes, Lisa, Tina Fey's looking for you. Some really, really cool experiences that I wouldn't have been able to replicate otherwise. And I just remember like struggling really hard with that and being like, Lisa, you wanted this so badly for so long, and you're here. And I remember one day I was floating around down the Nile River, which goes on for Niles and Niles and Niles. And I passed an elephant. And I thought to myself, this work doesn't challenge me anymore. And I felt bad. I felt bad because it was something that a version of me wanted so badly. But you know what? She got to live it out. And that is so, so cool. And it's something that I think is really important when you're thinking about did I wish for the wrong aspiration? Have I been putting my energy in the wrong place? No, absolutely not. Like if I had not gone to work at Jungle Cruise, I wouldn't have met some of my favorite people in the entire world. I wouldn't have picked up some of the very unusual skills that I have in my arsenal, and I definitely wouldn't have. I don't think I ever would have been able to let it go that I hadn't become a skipper because it's such a cool thing, right? Like it's a really cool bragging right. It's kind of like I don't know. I feel like a lot of workplaces say this, but it is very much true at the Jungle Cruise that once you're a skipper, you're always a skipper. You're going to be looking for the punny jokes. You're going to be spelling boat B-O-T-E. You're going to talk about the backside of water if it ever comes up. And it's just kind of like an inherent thing that becomes a part of you. So rather than mourning for too long that, I'd made some terrible mistake by going to the Jungle Cruise and deciding to work in attractions rather than making money serving. I really just sat with it. And I thought, how cool is it that I was able to make this dream come true for myself? How cool is it that this version of Lisa got to live out a life that she wanted to a T? Kind of remarkable. And if you think about it from that lens, it's more of like the phrase, it's the journey, not the destination, makes a lot of sense. Because I'm thinking about this on a bigger scale, right? Like the destination in life is something I haven't even really come up with yet, right? Like I guess a life well lived is the ultimate in what I want, but I haven't put a ton of thought into what that entire whole package would look like because I really enjoy getting surprised by the universe, even though sometimes I'm kind of kicking and screaming and like, when is the next thing going to come up? When is this, slow snow globe that I've been placed in going to stop being shaken by a toddler so I can be put down and the snowflakes can settle? But that's not it, right? Like I got to fully live out this particular experience, and it's something that I'm always going to cherish. And so I had also made a deal with myself when I very first started working at Disney, that if I ever found myself walking around Epcot at night getting ready for fireworks and I didn't think it was the coolest thing ever, that it was probably time for me to leave. Because I thought, well, I will have lost my wonder at that point. And then what? That time came at Epcot probably about 4 years into my 8-year stay at Disney. And I stayed longer than I should have because the thought of sitting down and thinking about what I did want instead of what I didn't want seemed to be a lot more overwhelming than just muscling through it and getting to the next day. And let me tell you, it's so exhausting. It's so exhausting. Like, yes, it's very daunting to think about what you want and come up with a picture, the picture of the puzzle so that you can move towards that. You know what you're building. But God, it's so much more exhausting to just be hanging on by a thread day by day. And that's really how it felt. So the ultimate catalyst for me was in 2020. I couldn't stand for more than 45 minutes because I had nerve damage in both of my feet. And so when Disney closed down for the pandemic, I was like, thank God they're saying it's only going to be 2 weeks. I can take these 2 weeks and my feet can recover. And then, of course, we know what happened. It took longer than 2 weeks. for anything to open back up. So anyway, during that time, that's when I finally sat down and thought, what do I want? What do I want? And why did I think that? Because I had nothing but time to think about it. Yes, I got into the Animal Crossing of it all, and that all that did for me, well, not all. The main thing that that ended up doing for me was show me what it's like to create and recreate over and over and over again. It was kind of a cool metaphor, now that I think about it, to be able to set up this island however I want, aesthetically. If I want to make it just really hard to get around and make it a maze, I can do that. If I want to turn it into a place that I would love to go vacation, I can do that too. It really doesn't matter. And that kind of showed me possibility, right? And then when I got down to it, I was like, well, I'm kind of showing myself little bit by little bit that just different things are possible for me. So what else could be possible for me? And I began to believe that it was possible for me to go work in a corporate environment wearing the clothes that I want to wear and getting paid well for it. And that was a really difficult thing to imagine because I had ingrained my personality with Disney so much. And this is something that I see pretty frequently with cast members is when you spend so much time in the bubble of where you're at. I mean, Disney is just kind of the example here. But I've seen it happen with lots of different things, right? You do something enough and you don't make time for other pieces of yourself, and you think, okay, well, this is just who I am now. The coolest thing about me, the most valuable thing about me, is that I know a lot of trivia about the Imagineers. Well, that is cool, right? It's a cool party trick, but it's not like there's just so much more to me than that. And there's so much more than that to anybody, right? Like, this isn't meant to be shady. This is just meant to draw awareness. Like, think about it. Where in your life are you over identifying with something that you think is like a characteristic about you that other people accept? You know, where in your life are you really kind of turning into a caricature of yourself because you think that that is how you're going to be accepted? And from an Enneagram lens, it's going to look different from different folks, right? Because the Enneagram, as we know, is a motivation-based tool. So the motivation to stand apart looks different for everybody, right? So for me, as a 3, whose core desire is to be of value, for me, for the longest, I thought the only value that I could really provide for anyone was, taking them around the parks and showing them the way and giving them all of my knowledge. And then that got really tiring after a while. And there was one time when I got somebody into a park from high school, and I went in with her because that's the rule, you have to. And she was like, okay, thanks, you can go now. Okay, thanks, I can go now. So like at that point, that was when I really realized like I'm not being valued. My resources are being valued. And that was a game changer for me. So anyway, back to the pandemic, when I am really thinking through what my options are, I know I cannot be a server anymore. And I'm working really closely with my coach, because I had been working with a coach since 2019. He was instrumental in helping me really start to build those steps towards becoming who I wanted to be. And he helped lay that groundwork for, hey, there actually are steps under here, right? Like, you're not actually looking at just like a pile of shit. Underneath that pile of shit, if you happen to clear it off a little bit, you'll actually find a staircase that will take you to your next level. Was he that flowery when he said it? No, he was not, but that is something that I appreciate about him. And so I was just having these really iterative conversations with him about like, okay, what happens if I move across the country? What happens if I leave this job behind? who am I without this job? And the further we got in those conversations, the more I was like, man, I'm self-identifying with this too hard. Like, I cannot make myself into such a 1D version. And I need this space. So I ended up applying for a lot of jobs that I didn't think that I was necessarily qualified for. Um, I thought of them as stretch goals, which are important, right? But a few of them were more of like a sprain than a stretch. Like I stretched a little bit too hard and it wasn't quite within reach. And then finally, I land a corporate job. Now, this corporate job is in Denver, where I do know people because I grew up in Colorado, right outside of Denver. And I take it. This job ends up being fully remote because of the pandemic, and folks working from home had given the feedback that they actually really liked working from home and it was helpful for them. So it turned out that I didn't really need to move to Denver at all, but that's just logistically speaking. I did need to move to Denver for what was next in my life. Um, and that thing was navigating the end of a chapter as gracefully as I possibly could. Um, as you may recall, earlier I mentioned that I met my husband at the Jungle Cruise. And when we were in Colorado, I began to realize that we were walking down two very different paths. And it wasn't a good thing, it wasn't a bad thing, but it was a thing that needed to be addressed. And um, I don't want to go into the details of it for his privacy. Um, but just know that it was a catalyst, right? And after that happened, after we parted ways, I decided to reward myself for just getting through 2020, really, with a trip out to California. I wanted to go see a friend and go to Disneyland, actually, and just kind of enjoy, because 2020 was heavy, y'all. I don't have to tell you, you know, you were there. And so I ended up flying out to California, met up with this friend and then a couple of other friends tagged on. And it was an incredible time. And while I wouldn't say that we did anything super out of the ordinary, something super out of the ordinary did happen. And it kind of happened in two parts here. So the first really stands out in my mind, where I was driving down towards San Diego to meet up with my friend for dinner. And as I was driving through Camp Pendleton, which is this US military site where you can't, there is no development on it, right? So it's like one of the only places in California where it's just like raw nature that you can see from the five, and it's unusual. Anyway, so I'm driving down, I'm kind of like marveling at the splendor of Camp Pendleton. The sun is going down. So to one side, I have these cliffs, right? These cliffs and these foothills that are really beautiful, and they remind me of Colorado. And then on the other side of me, I'm watching the sunset over the ocean, and I feel this like immense sense of calm come over me. And I remember seeing a road sign with the name of the town that just really caught my eye. And as I went through the trip, it was a good time. It was a really good time. And it was such a good time that I had a difficult time leaving. I had a difficult time leaving, and I got home and I thought, God, I got Disney out of my system, but you know what I didn't get out of my system? California. And that was kind of a remarkable thing to realize. being able to separate Disney as a motivation from other wants and needs that I had was a total game changer. It was something I hadn't really considered before. And at this point, I was just not identifying with it anymore. But it was just like, okay, well, why? Why am I feeling this pull here? And on top of that, I just got back to Denver. And I remember having a conversation with that friend that I met for dinner. And I said something about like, yeah, like I'm feeling overwhelmed. Yes, are you still planning on moving here? Because I'd mentioned to him one time that, yeah, I had thought about it. That was originally the plan before Florida. And I was like, well, I could, but I'm not sure. I just moved back to Denver. All my stuff is in my mom's garage and boxes. Like, I just feel overwhelmed by the sentiment. And he said, do you feel overwhelmed or do you feel excited? And I was like, damn. So that really stuck with me. And I thought on it for weeks and weeks and weeks. And then I decided that I was going to fly out to California, get a rental car, and just check out a bunch of different places. And the way that I wanted to go about that wasn't necessarily by being a tourist, because it's not very helpful to figure out how to live like a local if you are approaching this from the tourist perspective. So what I did instead was I made a short list of places that I thought I could go. I researched the apartments that were within my price range. And then I went to the Target in each of these cities because I thought to myself, nobody goes to Target to be impressive. They just go there to exist, right? Pick up this stuff they want, maybe get their mind off of something and get out. And if other people are existing in the same way that I exist, that's probably a good sign that I will fit into the community. And so I did. And there was a place that I put on my list that I completely forgot about until a week before flying out. And I saw that town name come up on my list, and I immediately rearranged everything to go there first. There was just something in me that was saying, you need to visit this place first. So I did. I rearranged everything. I ended up coming to that town in North County, San Diego. And I went and I walked to the beach, and I remember just sitting on the beach, smiling, looking at the pier, and I felt this sounds, I don't know. I know this sounds like a little bit silly if this isn't the world that you live in, but I felt my head, my heart, and my gut connect. It felt like a golden thread stringing them together all the way down. And it's very rare that I feel that kind of synchronicity on a decision. But if I'm going to feel that kind of like, oh, moment, like let it be on a life-changing move like this. So I'm like, yes, I know I'm in the right place. This is definitely the city that I want to live in. It's time to get to work on looking for apartments. So I start looking, I start emailing a bunch of folks, calling around, doing whatever I can. I'm basically just sitting at a bar, sipping on beer, and just like emailing, trying to get my name out there. So then nobody's really getting back to me. Nobody's really picking up. I'm getting pretty frustrated because I know that my time is limited to be looking for a place to live. And then finally, I get an email from a landlord off of apartments.com. And she says, okay, I'm glad that you're interested in this condo. It's actually split. I'm not sure why it listed it like this, but you would be living with one other person. You get the whole half of the condo to yourself. It's pretty split up. She is a teacher, and she's like pretty easy to live with. I was like, great. I said, can I come see the apartment? And the landlord says, well, we're having an open house on Saturday. You're welcome to join. And I said, well, I'm flying back on Saturday. Is there any possibility that I could come out a little bit early and meet you two? And she was like, sure. So I go over there. I talk to both of them. I immediately feel like driving into the parking lot, I'm like, oh, this is where I'm going to live. And so I'm over there for about an hour talking to both the landlord and my potential roommate. And I was like, okay, well, I feel great about this. So I would love to talk about like next steps. And they say, well, there's still the open house that we need to see through. We'll let you know. Whew, that is worrisome for somebody who is like, I'm looking to move as soon as possible. Nobody else is getting back to me, whatever. But the place is gorgeous. Absolutely gorgeous. It checks all the boxes that I want. It's within my price range. I feel safe walking alone at night with my dog. And it's like a mile from the ocean, which is just incredible. Um, and so the next day, I only had one more day left, and I could have spent it looking for apartments. That might have been the reasonable thing to do. But something told me, Lisa, it's taken care of. You should just enjoy yourself on this last day. So I went to the beach and I just kicked around in the waves for a while. And kicking the waves is my favorite thing, man. Like, if you're happy, kick the waves. If you're pissed, kick the waves. They don't care. They're just going to keep rolling up on the shore. And I think that's really cool. So I'm dancing in the waves, listening to some music that feels like really upbeat and happy, and I don't look around for anything else. I'm basically putting all my eggs in this one basket. So I get back home. I hear nothing for a little bit, and then landlord reaches out. She says, hey, I just wanted to let you know you are in the top 2 finalists for this apartment. And she's making her decision. We'll get back to you as soon as possible. Okay, great. Landlord texts me a couple days later. Sorry, this is taking a while. She's just got a lot to consider. There's a lot going on at work. Okay, great. No problem. Just let me know. Then the landlord texts me again. So we had such a good time meeting you. And immediately I'm like, oh, I see where this is going. But she's decided to go with the other person. We wish you well in your apartment hunting and really hope that you find what you're looking for. And I was like, okay, thank you. So I'm a little bit distraught about it. I'm thinking to myself, this isn't over though. But like, I have no reason to think that, like zero reason to think that. I was told no, it was a no. Time to move on, right? Well, not quite. Because I go through the workday. She texted me this like first thing in the morning. After work, she texts me again. Hey Lisa, are you still looking for a place to live? I was like, well, yeah. I haven't had time to look for anything else. And she said, the spot is open if you want it. The other renter had a pet that she didn't disclose. And it turns out that like the existing tenant has an allergy to that pet. Okay. So I'm like, great, send over the lease. She sends over the lease. What's the number on my building? 555. And if you've listened to my buddy Dave, Dave likes to talk about angel numbers. And this was around the time when I started kind of noticing that numbers would show up in unexpected places. And I looked it up, and 555 is all about change. Cannot think of a more appropriate way to be like, yeah, there's going to be a big change. You are going to move to California. You're not going to know anyone. You're going to work from home. Enjoy. So that was in 2022. I got the offer to live there in January. I ended up moving at the very end of February. And I have been out here in Southern California, though I have lived in 3 different places now, for 3 years as of this month. So all of this to say is, how does this apply to you? That's the question, right? If you have a desire for something, that desire is there for a reason. It is not there for you to ignore it. It is there for you to find your way to it. And sometimes it doesn't matter how long it takes, right? Because different timing means different things. If I had moved out here as intended in 2012, then maybe I would have conflated Disney and California with being the same thing, right? Like maybe I would have thought, I got it out of my system. but that's not true. And I feel very strongly that I am exactly where I'm supposed to be. I know that I'm exactly where I'm supposed to be. Southern California is my home. This is where I belong. Has it been easy building from scratch? Fuck no, it hasn't. It's been really, really tough. There are some days that have been excruciating. There are some days that have been just breathtaking, right? Like anytime I go to that same beach where I felt like the head heart gut connection, I just feel this overwhelming sense of calm. Like, God, I love where I live. Anytime I go outside, I think, God, I love where I live. And the people that I'm meeting are people that I'm able to slowly build a foundation with in the exact way that I want to, right? If they stick around, they stick around. If they're falling off for a reason. And I recognize what an exceptionally privileged place I am in to be able to have started over in my 30s and found the tools and resources to build myself into the best version of myself that I can possibly be. Now, is that something that I'm still working on? Absolutely. This is a lifelong process. It definitely takes a while to figure out what you like and troubleshoot and learn how to stand up for yourself and learn when it's not worth the energy to keep something around and how to iterate. It's been very humbling at times. I've had to get very creative with the way that I meet people because I work from home. There is no office environment. And in the past, I've met my friends at work or my partners at work. I'm really good at the don't shit where you eat thing. And it's just different this time around. And why is it different? Because I listened to this kernel inside of me that everybody was trying to get me not to listen to, right? And the way that they went about that was different depending on the person. Nobody wants to be like, hey, don't follow your dreams. That sounds bad. What they'll do instead is start saying things like, oh, you want to go there? Haven't you heard? There are earthquakes there. Well, yeah, I heard that there are earthquakes in California, but guess what? Every single location has its own unique catalog of available natural disasters that could happen. That's not really a factor for me. Oh, well, it's really expensive. Yeah, it is. Okay. But I'm finding ways to continue to live where I know in my soul that I belong. So that's involved getting creative with different things. That's involved finding the ways to keep improving just one little step at a time until I'm in a place where I'm comfortable and then I can, move forward and thrive. Meeting people has been very interesting. It's involving a lot more intentionality than it did when I was just making friends through work, because now what I'm having to do to find these friends is pursue my interests and my passions. And it's not a thing of convenience anymore. It is a thing of absolute intentionality. And my relationships are so much richer for it too. So I guess the moral of the story of all of this isn't necessarily, okay, now it's time for you to go out and leave everything you've ever known and it'll work out for you and you're gonna, turn into this freckle-faced lady who starts her own podcast. No, I'm walking a different path than you are. And when you're meant to be somewhere. You do. Like, nobody is going to float down from the sky and hand you an envelope and say, yes, you were right about this, but you will feel it. And so where has your intuition been guiding you that perhaps you just have been explaining away? Where have you found desires coming up again and again out of nowhere? Right? Where have you been like, I know I belong there, but I just don't think I'm good enough for it? Y'all, I experienced imposter syndrome when I moved to California. No joke. I was telling one of my friends that lives up north, I just don't feel like a real Californian. Like, I feel like I need to behave differently or be differently to belong here. And she was like, that is ridiculous. And I'm glad she said that because she's right? Like, I still get to have a foothold here. I get to be my unique self. And in fact, I should be my unique self because that is a gift to the community. If we all show up in the exact same way, then what are we doing, right? Like, it becomes like an echo chamber. It's not really celebrating the gifts that each of us have. And I really appreciate the ways in which I can wear flip-flops here year round. Nobody's going to be talking to me about hiking flip-flops versus snow flip-flops. And I get to just really explore things at my own pace and understand where my haunts are and let people that are passionate about this area that I know is my home show me what it is that they love about it, so I don't have to do all of the exploring on my own. If I had to do things that felt weird, kind of like the Meetup app, oh yeah, that's really weird, but it builds the muscle, right? That you can talk to people, that there are so many people that are in the same boat as you that you may not even realize are there. We're all looking for connection, and the way that we connect really changed after 2020. So if you're going to take anything away from this podcast, I hope it's this. Your desires are your desires for a reason. If you are not causing harm to anyone else, then there is no reason why you shouldn't find the first step and go with it. Okay? You do not have to be 100% ready. You do not have to have a fully fleshed out plan. What you need to have is the inner knowing that you were given this message for a reason and that it is your duty as a gift from you to make these things happen. Because people don't really regret what they've done as often as they've regret what they haven't done. So that's my call to you. Think about what you would really regret having not done at the end of your life. As long as you are not causing harm, then why not? You know? So that's the episode for today. Thank you so much for joining me in the treehouse. I appreciate each of you, and have a lovely rest of your day. Thanks for joining us in the treehouse today. We were so happy to have you. Hey, if you enjoyed your time here today, could you do us one little favor and pass this on to someone else who might enjoy it? We appreciate you so much. See you next week.